Spring is in the air, so what better time for a relationship refresh? So that's where our Jess O'Reilly comes in. Are we going to do some spring cleaning?
We are. We're going to spring clean all the relationships in our lives.
Okay.
From friendships to co-worker relationships to intimate relationships.
Okay, and we're going to tackle also some spring trends we're seeing right now. And the first one coming from the University of Toronto that says there's little evidence that our love languages are actually a thing. Now, we've talked love languages on the show before.
Right. So, I mean, I think it's something like 30 million people have completed the love language test, and it is a great place to begin conversations around relationships. So, of course, the love languages suggest that there is a primary way in which you communicate love. So it could be physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and I always forget the last one. It's my partner's acts of service. I think that's yours, right?
That's mine too. That's how you show your love to me.
And so this is a good place to start, but it can be very reductive. And sometimes we notice people will throw it back in your face. Well, my love language is this, so you have to do it this way. All right, it can be a framework to communicate your needs, but a partner doesn't necessarily meet all of your needs. And more importantly, these U of T researchers found that we don't necessarily have a primary love language. It's far more complex than that. We like to feel and show love in multiple ways. They also findings suggest that there are far more than 5 love languages, especially when we think about the way the world has evolved, the way technology has evolved. There are not only 5 primary ways to communicate your love. And then there are some problems with some of the, I guess, original advice around these love languages that can suggest that people should do things that are uncomfortable for them. Not uncomfortable like, oh, I don't feel good, but uncomfortable like actually putting themselves in harm's way. So we want to rethink the love languages. If you find them useful, for yourself, that's perfectly fine. We're not here to tell you that we're the experts in your experience, but hopefully it's just the beginning of a conversation that is ongoing and more complex and personal and nuanced.
Okay. Another trend that you wanted to talk about was the idea of saying no more.
Oh my gosh, are you good at saying no?
Yes.
Oh,
too good.
See, I need some of that because I'm terrible at saying no. And what the research found, so multiple experiments showed that we overestimate the negative consequences of saying no. So, for example, to performing a favor, to attending an event, we overestimate what we think people's anger or frustration or negative judgment of ourselves, plus the negative or adverse effects on the relationship will be, when in fact saying no doesn't ruin relationships. So this can be really reassuring for, I think, people pleasers like me. And I want people to think about, is there something in your life this week that you can perhaps say no to? Is there an invitation? Is there a request? So that you can cut down on your to-do list, because burnout is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you know what? So you're not talking just within your family dynamic or even in your relationship. You're talking even outside with friends and social commitments and things like that.
Yeah, and we know there are certain people who say yes to everything at work, and more becomes expected of us, and that intersects with different identities as well.
Okay, all right. Another trend. Okay, this is a bold statement, and this is a headline that's kind of making the rounds right now. Mm-hmm. Married cheaters not regretting their actions.
My goodness, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because yes, this headline is everywhere, and A, it doesn't align with the research that pre-exists this supposed headline or the supposed finding, but B, this is also research drawn from a site that encourages people to have affairs. So they are on this site for the explicit purpose of finding an extramarital or extra-relational affair. So this is not representative. And again, I work with people who are with partners who have had affairs. I work with people who have had affairs. And the underlying feelings are usually there's regret, there's guilt, there's shame, there's distress, there's associated mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety. And so I think that framing affairs as a positive thing overall is very dangerous and doesn't reflect what we're seeing in the literature nor in practice.
All right, so check the source.
Yes, please.
Okay. Another trend here, you wanted to discuss is a key, one of the keys to a happy relationship.
Yes, and this is self-compassion. So I was so happy to see this research coming out around how being kind to yourself, how letting go of perfectionism within yourself, how forgiving yourself for making mistakes can actually be good, not only for you, but for how your partner feels about themselves. And it makes sense, right? If I'm super hard on myself, you might extrapolate that I'm going to be equally hard on you. And I think we could all practice some more self-compassion to slow down, be in the moment. We know that mindfulness, for example, can be a form of self-compassion. self-compassion. It could be simply waking up in the morning and instead of reaching for your phone, taking 6 easy, slow, deep breaths and just being in your body. We know that gratitude can help to support self-compassion. And then I also like to suggest the Freaky Friday approach, which is when you're being hard on yourself, switch bodies with someone you adore, with your best friend, and think about what would you say to your best friend if they were in your shoes? Because we're often easier on other people than we are on ourselves. And the consequences or the positive outcomes of just being kind to ourselves are going to be felt across our life and especially in our relationships.
All right, some great advice. There we go. We're getting this season off to on the right foot.
Yes.
Right start for spring.
I'm ready for spring.
Me too. We did some spring cleaning. Thank you, Jess.
Pleasure.